Welcome to the Rewild Gear podcast. Modern life, society, and responsibilities have domesticated us. But now it's time to rediscover your adventurous side. Whether that's camping, hiking, hunting, fishing, or just spending time in the great outdoors, this is the podcast for you. Join us as we get back to the wilderness and rewild. Welcome to the Rewild Gear podcast. I'm your host, Seth Spears, founder of Rewild Gear, and I am here today with my brother, Josh Spears, one of the four brothers involved with our fun project, and he's the only one who has not been on the show yet. So really happy to have him on today to talk about all things rewild, nature, outdoors, and his involvement and his love of the outdoors. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Excited to get this rolling and have a little fun. See where this goes.
Yeah, for sure. So you were not at deer camp this past fall, and myself, Adam, and David were, and we had a rip-roaring good time. Many jokes were made at your expense.
Yep.
There was a few deers that were harvested, including the family and property record by Adam, a huge 10-pointer. And also my oldest son, Tony, got his first deer as well. So it was a great all-around time. But we did record two initial episodes, the first podcast episodes there while at deer camp. And so you weren't there for that. And then also this is episode 4. And episode 3 was with David and myself as well at the cabin talking about how things are progressing. So want to get you on here and talk a little bit about the company and the gear and all kinds of stuff like that.
Cool.
So
sounds great.
So first of all, why don't you introduce yourself, who you are, your background, what you do, all that stuff?
Yeah. So my name is Josh Spears, one of the four brothers involved in this project. And my background, grew up in the hills of Kentucky, green grass.
You call it hills?
I called it hills. From Kentucky, we, at a young age, I think we all developed a deep love for the outdoors. We had this property of about 7 acres, I think it was, and some of my best memories were going over there and just running amok.
Including the time you tried to blind me with a paintball?
Yeah, definitely including that time. That might have been a highlight.
That was one of the worst times that I ever had over there.
We can come back to that.
No, or not.
But so I've always loved the outdoors, loved movement just in general. Spent a lot of time working in the fitness space, and tying my love for just movement outdoors with fitness, which is a lot of fun. And now got kids and working to instill that same love for the outdoors in them. Which so far I think it's worked pretty well. We tend to spend quite a few nights every year out under the stars, which is always fun. Various locations, and just trying to enjoy this thing we call life. So,
so we're all trying to do, yes.
Right. Currently I love outdoors, movement, and wine. And so it's a...
What is your current favorite wine right now?
I don't know that I have a current favorite. At the moment, I'm actually drinking a rosé from... well, here you go. I'll just show you. Got a little Lodi wine.
Fantastic.
Right? So, but... yeah, so I don't have a favorite wine at the moment. I'm in Arizona, so we've got, quite a bit of heat out here. So it's definitely rosé season.
Gotcha. Rosé all day.
So yeah. So
super. Great. So you've been in the wine business for a little bit as well. So I don't know if you want to get into too much of that. There's something within nature and within agriculture in general. And as part of the company, one of the things we're focusing on is having a conservation ethic. in trying to help regenerate regenerative agriculture and improve our soils. And obviously, wine can be a crop that is sprayed quite a bit. So I know you've seen
Yeah.
a little bit of that. Um,
Yeah.
and have tried to focus on a little bit the more natural ways to do that.
Yeah.
What other things are you seeing just in your world as far as kind of that movement and health side and kind of that conservation side?
Sure. Sure. That's a great question. And I think over the last probably 5 years or so, there's been a bigger push for more understanding of where your food, drink, what have you is coming from, right? And um, with that being said, not only having an understanding, but also an appreciation for the extra work that goes into making things in a more natural, wholesome way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that being said, there when I was in Lodi and they were doing a lot of great stuff out there in the wine industry, focusing on more of that um, holistic approach, if you will, to growing grapes and making wine. Um, Less chemicals, and one of the programs they had out there, Lodi Rolls, where basically a sustainability program for the wine industry out there, the grape growing region. And so putting owl boxes out there and just trying to let
Oh,
nature
interesting.
work within nature to keep pests away from the vineyards. And taking some of those approaches to try to work with nature. And I think that's been really cool to see, also just from a um, conservation standpoint, realizing that when nature is working in harmony, it's a beautiful thing. Um, we've gotten so far away from that as a society, um, that I think it's really important and needed to see some of that coming back, focusing on the land that we're farming today, but you also want to farm hundreds and countless
Yeah.
years into the future, by making sure that you're not destroying the land we're living on.
That's a great point. When it comes to the wine industry in general, a few years ago, I went to Italy and we did a whole tour of all of these dry farmed wines where they're not watering them and, they're not spraying
Yeah.
pesticides and all of that. And one of the things that I noticed is in, like, say, Napa Valley and Lodi, the whole wine region in the US, they're very nicely manicured and beautiful and picturesque. But a lot of these places in Italy that we went to, these vineyards, they didn't look like that. They were much more natural, if you will. So they weren't spraying Roundup or anything else underneath
Right.
vines. There were bugs, around, and there was grass and some like clover and herbs and, what some people would call weeds surrounding it. But
Right.
the way they explained it was it all works in harmony with nature, with the terroir. And so it
Yeah.
was just really interesting to see all of that.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
biodiversity there too.
Right. No, for sure. And there's some people have a slightly different approach on that. Some are focused a lot on aesthetics, so there's part of keeping it clean and
Nothing wrong
crisp
with
and
that.
everything like that.
Yeah.
Right. No, absolutely. And we tend to take a slightly different approach, just with our winemaking in general out here and growing.
Yeah.
Now I will say that there's, again, more of a push for and I say this in quotation marks, but natural wine, in the sense of, native fermentation. If they do water, it's limited.
Yeah.
So it kind of gearing more towards that. And we're also seeing that there's a lot more people that are kind of drawn to that, more of the kind of boutique, smaller styles of wine, that you can tell that there's a story behind it.
Yeah.
From the farmers to the winemakers and everything. And again, I think that's a really cool thing to see. More people being drawn to that type of program.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. One of my favorite wine companies or importers is Dry Farm Wines, and so they only work with those winemakers who are dry farming their wines and making sure that they're not spraying with any pesticides or Roundup or anything like that. And so they're super high quality, and then lower alcohol wines too. So those are always pretty good. That's kind of an aside, but
yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about Rewild Gear.
Yeah.
What are you most excited about?
So there's quite a bit. I think any time you get a chance to work on a project and spend time in the outdoors while taking ideas and putting those into an actual tangible product, I think that's really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we've spent countless hours just talking about the ideal fill in the blank, whether it be a knife, a pot, a
Ad nauseum.
yeah. Fork, spoon, stove, etc. Right. And I'm really excited, and part of this is just because I love knives in general, but I'm super excited about the knife. And we all know that the countless, moments spent, not just in the field practicing or utilizing different tools, different knives, but also just in refining the design that we have here. And I'm super excited about that. Really, really pleased with how that's
I'd like
turning
to
out.
dig into the knife a little bit more, because I think it was you and myself that originally started talking about creating the quote unquote perfect knife. I
Yeah.
probably, while sitting around the campfire, I think camping 10 years ago or something,
Yeah.
maybe longer.
Yeah.
If memory serves me, and correct me on this, I think we were probably like up at Red River Gorge or something, sitting around a
I
fire,
I
comparing
think you're
knives.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember that
Um,
story or more detail?
yeah, vaguely. We were talking about kind of the go-to knife, right? Like what if you're just grabbing your gear and going, what are you taking with
Yep.
you? And we've all got a decent collection of knives for various
Some more than
reasons.
others.
Right. Trying to find that perfect one. And we started throwing out ideas like, okay, I really like this one, but I dislike this. And we all kind of had similar ideas, but then everybody had kind of their own unique, well, I really like this, or I really don't. Right. And so, in the process of figuring out what this would look like, we've continued over the last 10 years or whatever it's been now, buying knives, using them a lot, and saying, okay, this one worked really well in this situation. This one did not. And it's funny because even on our calls as we're designing the knife, sometimes we'll go off on a tangent that's completely unrelated to anything that we're supposed to be focusing on. And then, usually a story comes up also. Like I remember when I was probably 10, and Adam had this pocket knife that I think he had recently got it, and he was cutting. It was a ink cartridge from like a copier, fax machine.
I don't like where this is going.
No. Well, I was the guy holding the cartridge.
Oh, of course.
And I still have a scar to show the battle wounds. If you can see that right on the thumb. Definitely should have had stitches for that, but didn't. Took forever to heal. Anyway, so from moments like that to present day designing what we refer to as the ultimate utilitarian knife, the kind of your go-to.
Yeah.
Whether you're skinning large game, small game, whether you're doing camp chores, even in the kitchen, like it works great. So, love the materials we're using, and the feel is fantastic.
So
really excited about it.
Of the four of us brothers involved in this project, you're probably the most knowledgeable about the different types of steel. I know you've kind of gone down a lot of rabbit holes and just imbibed yourself in YouTube
Yeah.
reviews and tutorials and just really digging deep into the steel.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that, about what you love about the S35VN that we're using and
Yeah.
why we decided to use that?
Yeah. So we went back and forth on a few different steels. And in a perfect world, you would have one that has a perfect balance, right? Of corrosion resistance, edge retention, toughness, right? So you'd have a
Ease of
perfect
sharpenability.
ease of sharp. Yeah, exactly. So you'd have a perfect blend of this. Unfortunately, there's a compromise. So if it's super tough, probably not going to be as easy to sharpen. If it's if it's like a carbon steel, it's gonna rust if it gets wet. So there's some of those things that trying to find a balance. And S35VN seemed to have the closest balance between all those.
Yeah.
And it holds an edge well, easy enough to sharpen, good corrosion resistance, and enough toughness that made sense, right? And then a lot of that comes down to the heat treat, which we're excited about how that's being heat treated and all that, because they do a great job.
Yeah.
And so, trying to find that balance, S35 was the one that seemed to have the most, it seemed to make the most sense and be as close to fit into that perfect universe as possible for a blade steel. So we're super excited about that, because when you're out in the field, you don't necessarily want to be thinking, okay, do I have to oil my knife all the time? Is it going to rust? Is it going to, because I have used 1095 forever. And
well, I mean,
it's great.
We're all pretty big fans of Essie knives, and they're great.
Exactly.
But
yep.
They rust.
Yeah. The downside is they rust. And, my experience has been they rust pretty easily. And
especially when you're using it as a dive knife.
Yeah, definitely. But that's the thing, because we wanted something that would be, you can use around water. Again, we're not saying go take it diving, but you can use it around water. You can, beat it enough. You can do anything that you would need to do with the knife as a tool, and it'll survive, keep going, and last, forever.
That's the plan anyway.
Yeah. So,
when we were really starting to dig into the steels, I looked at Blade HQ. They have a diagram, like a review of all the different primary knife steels that are in use.
Yeah.
Tool steels, knife steels, all the different primary ones. And so I went through that pretty meticulously and looking at that balance that you were talking about, because it's like a graph, like an X axis. And kind of balanced, like how well is the edge retention, its corrosion resistance, its how sturdy it is, like all of those different factors. And for me, being a very visual person, that made a lot of sense, just seeing that, because it seemed to be the most rounded and balanced of all of those.
Yeah.
And I found that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And they've got some great information on there, just diving into the steels a little deeper. We could talk knife steels all day, but a lot of people would get really bored by that. Yeah.
Just one other question about the knife steel, though. What was your second favorite? Like, if you were going to choose one other steel other than 35VN?
Right. No, that's a good question. The other one that I really like is CPM 3V. And that, so it has some corrosion resistance, but it's not a stainless steel. And super high toughness, so you can beat it, you can do a lot to it, and it'll just keep going. And and decent ease of sharpening also, especially for the toughness that it has. And that was my second favorite steel, if not S35VN. Yeah, so CPM 3V.
Gotcha. Yeah, both great steels. And, we went back and forth a lot on it. And I started really looking into a lot of the more corrosion resistant ones like the LC 200N and some of those,
Yeah.
which,
Yeah.
but then those are a lot harder to sharpen and
Yeah.
a little bit softer and things like that. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Josh, one of the things that you're really big into is the water, and actually
Yeah.
all of us are, but you probably more specifically having taught swimming lessons for a long time.
Yeah.
How has that affected, your love of nature and the outdoors and like some of the activities that you like to do and all that?
Yeah. So when I tell people that I live in the desert, a lot of times they laugh. They're like, "You realize that the desert is the opposite of water." Like, yeah, that's actually a good point. So that being said, anytime I'm going outside, hiking, adventuring, planning, whatever, I'm making sure that there is going to be a body of water that I end up near. So when I was in California, that was basically what all my trips revolved around, making sure that there's a body of water. Whether it be camping somewhere, hiking, just as long as I'm ending up in water, I'm happy. And so it's been a lot of fun because, I mentioned this in the beginning, trying to instill that love of wilderness and nature into my kids. And even if we're at random places and there's like a lake or something, the kids want to go swimming, which is great. But at the same time, it's not always great to swim in a random waterfall in the middle of a city. The
Yeah.
downside of that. But, so we love the water. I think that there's something just nourishing to the soul. And I think it just helps to bring balance when you're out in nature around water, from the sound of a waterfall to just watching the breeze move over the water, skim the surface. I think it's very calming, but it's also really easy to get very present when you're experiencing that.
Almost meditative.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite things, just out in nature, like just being present, seeing the water, and then I always take a like a leather. Another thing that I think all of us brothers love is leather, so I have like a leather journal. Take it when I'm out in nature and just write whatever comes. Usually nonsense, but whatever. It's but it's interesting. Sometimes I'll get ideas. Sometimes I will get clarity on things. Sometimes it's just like random scribbles, doodles, what have you. And I think it's also a really good way to put things in perspective. Like if you're sitting on a beach and you're looking out at the vast ocean, wow, right? Like a moment in time is all we have on this earth. That ocean has existed since the beginning of time. How many people have been in my same boat, sitting on that beach, staring out and just mesmerized by the power of that water? And I think it also helps you to ask bigger questions as well.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about swimming lessons. I know that's something you've been pretty passionate about over the years and have given a lot of lessons and taught a lot of kids how to swim, including your own, and help with mine as well.
Yeah.
And how do you see that as part of your mission as far as getting people in the outdoors and into nature? And tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. Where to start? So, I think I started teaching, I guess I was in high school still, and ended up getting certified through the American Red Cross. Loved it, around the water. And I found out that I was actually really good at teaching. And it was one of those things that I realized, kind of my claim was I can teach anyone to swim in 5 steps. Give me 14 days. Anyone. I challenge somebody to present someone that's
pretty damn
swim.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, does that mean they'll be an Olympic swimmer? No. But will they be able to learn, the basic steps? Yeah. Um, and um, so I loved it. It was fun. It was super fun just to see the excitement, and water is, again, just I have so many positive memories around water. And I wanted to share that with other people. Plus, um, I think everyone should know how to swim. Like, you never know what life's going to throw at you. Everybody should know how to swim. And um, so one summer I was in the pool and I was working with, I think, a small group. And I just kind of stopped. I was like, man, I do the same thing, regardless of whether I'm teaching an adult or child. It's the same 5 steps over and over again. Now, change my approach a little bit, tone of voice, the games we're playing, right? Like, whatever that might be, but it's always the same thing. And I started looking around also. I was like, what's not out there? A program that teaches parents how to teach their kids how to swim. We teach our kids how to ride a bike, how to brush your teeth, basic things, right? Why not teach them how to swim?
Kind of life skill.
Exactly. A basic life skill. Yeah. And so I came up with the idea of a online swim course that teaches parents how to teach your kids how to swim in 5 steps. And so that's been a lot of fun. We've gotten really good feedback. And we have in a PDF as well as videos. And with the strange space the world's in right now, with things shut down, closed down, and limited resources and some of that stuff, it's a huge fills a huge need that's out there right now.
Yeah.
I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but last summer the drownings in Arizona skyrocketed, and people were saying because lack of swim lessons and all that stuff, which is really sad.
As an add-on to that, over the past 2 weeks, so I'm in Florida, and so pretty close to the beach, and so there's just been a ton of spring breakers and people down here, and I think there has been about 8 deaths just over the past couple of weeks, just drownings. There's been some storms, and the rip currents have been really strong, and going out there and just not understanding the power of the water. And even if you're a strong swimmer, it's a little different if you're in a pool, as opposed to being or in a river in a current.
Right. Well, and no, that's a really good point, because I know that I've been out in water where, I like to think I'm at least a decent swimmer, right? And I've been in water, I'm like, okay, this is like, if you didn't know what to do, good luck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's a part of that where, was it the smartest decision to go in that water beforehand? Probably not. But afterwards, you kind of think, maybe I should. But you live through it and tell another story. But again, like, that's a good point. Is a lot of times you don't know what's underneath, right? As far as the rip current, the undertow, some of those things that exist. So that's really sad. Deaths and stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, water is incredibly powerful. I mean, it's one of the most powerful natural elements there is, and so it can go from very calm to very not calm, very calm. So because of that, you just got to really respect it. There was, the story about the time that Adam and I almost died on the Gasper River trying to rescue David and Joe's canoe.
I still can't believe you guys lost my canoe. I love that thing.
Blame Joe.
Yeah.
Definitely Joe's fault. For sure. But we'll get into that story some other time, not today.
Yeah.
Josh, what's your favorite outdoor adventure story? Something that you've been involved in, or like your experience somewhere in nature, something that you've done. Give us a story.
Yeah, man, favorite. That's a tough one. Probably, I mean, the one that stands out the most. So this was 2009. So it's end of summer, and so it's like, late August, I guess. And we went to Yosemite, which is just a beautiful place. If anybody hasn't been, highly recommend you go. And we got to hike Half Dome. So this was the last year that you could just hike without having to get a permit and all that stuff.
Oh, you can't do that anymore.
And no,
really?
It's I think they have like a draw. It's kind of hard to get permits now. So I've talked to quite a few people that have tried to go and they haven't had success yet. So, but yeah, and so that was the last year, and awesome hike. At the top, there's these cables that you use to get to the top, and the view is just absolutely spectacular. And it's a pretty long hike. And so this was with myself, my wife, and then two of the brothers, and one of them being Joe. His nickname after this trip was GPS. So we made it there a really good time, and we planned it out so we'd have enough water, get to the top, and then once you get back down, there are a few places where you can refill, right? And so got to the top, we hung out there for a while, taking pictures, just relaxing, enjoying the beauty of Half Dome. And so we started coming down, and Joe's like, "Hey, let's go this way. It's a shortcut." I'm like, okay. And so you have to understand this about Joe. Like when he's on, and he's usually really good at direction, but when he's off, he's off. And this case, he was really off. So we started going down, and they always tell you don't go off the trails and in the park and everything, this, that, whatever. And so we went off, and I'm like, "Joe, you sure this is a shortcut?" And he's like, yeah, just down a little ways, and then it's going to loop around and get right back on the trail, and we'll have saved tons of time. Cool. All right. And so probably at least an hour, like, "Joe, I don't know if this is working out." But we're having fun. It's like, whatever, not even thinking too much about it. Then probably like maybe an hour and a half or so into it, Joe's like, "Whoa, Joe, you okay?" It's like, "I don't know. I'm not feeling so good." "Joe, you sure it's not because you took us the wrong way?" And he's like, "No, man, like, I don't know what's going on. I got to sit down."
Oh boy.
I guess he was having some altitude sickness.
Oh,
and
what was the elevation?
Oh gosh, I can't remember. I'm gonna have to look that up actually, because I don't remember off the top of my head now.
Yeah, no biggie.
Yeah. Anyway, and so he just like sat down, and at this point, like, our water supply is getting really, really low. And again, because we had planned this out, so enough to get there on the trail, a couple miles in, and back to the next refill. So at this point, we probably went about 2 miles or so in the wrong direction.
Mm-hmm.
And we're almost out of water. And Joe's having altitude sickness. And so we kind of stop, regroup, and we're kind of debating, hey, do we go around here? Do we go back up? Long story short, we end up deciding, okay, we're gonna have to go right back up where we were.
Oh man.
And again, this is an extra 2 miles, almost out of water. So we start going, and we have to go a lot slower because Joe's like not doing well. And so we finish up the rest of our water. We're like, wow, this is horrible. This is so miserable because sun's beating down. We're exhausted at this point, and we've still got another mile or so just to get back to the trail. And then we've got another couple miles to get to the next water.
What time of day of this?
It's probably around like 4 at this point.
Okay.
So it's like starting to get dark.
Getting later afternoon.
Yeah, later afternoon, 4 or 5. And so we started hiking back up, we stop, and then we're like, okay, so Joe and Bridget stayed in the spot. We're like, hey, Dave and I are going to go up there. We've got to get some water. Like, Joe's not doing well, and my mouth is absolutely parched. Like, I can't even talk.
Like sandpaper.
Yeah. And so we get up there, and at this point, there's not that many people on the trail because this late, not many people are, still trying to summit. And so there's a guy with these two kids, like teenagers, and I go to ask them for some water. Literally nothing came out of my mouth. It was so dry. And so Dave was able to manage, like, you guys got any water? And so they had two like 16-ounce bottles of water. They gave one to each of us. So Dave and I pounded one. We brought the other one back to Joe and Bridget. Finally, they had enough energy, so kept going. Finally made it back to the trail. At this point, it's almost dark. Like, it's a lot later. And now no one's really on the trail. And so we're walking. We find this spot where there's some water. Now, it's later in the summer, so a lot of the water will dry up, especially if they haven't had a ton of snow and all that stuff. And so, so this water was like filthy. I mean, leaves. Like, not the leaves are that bad, but there's just like still water, right? Like, nothing that you'd really want to drink.
Hello, Giardia.
Yeah, exactly. Luckily, Dave had his Katadyn pocket filter, and so kind of spread the leaves away and whatever else, the scum was on top, stuck it in there, started pumping. I don't think I have ever been so grateful for water. Finally, Joe felt better. Like, he just started pounding water, all of us. We sat there forever. By the time we got back, it was almost midnight. And we had left that morning at like sunrise.
Whoa.
So I think we ended up doing, so after we figured the loops and whatever else we did, I think we ended up doing like 20, maybe 20 something miles.
Oh my goodness.
That trip. It's not supposed to be that long.
That's a long hike.
Yeah. And on limited water. So yeah.
How did Joe's directions get so far off?
Honestly, none of us really know what happened. None of us really know what happened. And like, looking back, I can kind of see, because it looked like if you went down and then looked like it was going to loop around.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem was the trail would have looped up a lot higher and then kept going that way.
Oh.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So by the time we had hiked down that far, we would have had to hike another 8 miles maybe to get, no, I don't know, 8 miles, but 5 miles or so to get back on the trail. So
wow.
Either way, fun times. So now I have this thing with making sure I always have water and then extra water. Yeah.
2 is 1 and 1 is none, right?
That's right.
When it comes to water, even more so.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a fantastic story and a perfect segue into this question. And you've already answered a little bit, but what essential gear do you always take with you no matter what when you're spending time in nature or the outdoors?
Yeah. Obviously water.
We know David has a water filter. Have you made that?
Yes.
Too?
So, yeah, I actually keep a Sawyer, one of the minis in my pack.
Oh yeah.
So I like it because it's small enough that you can, throw it in there. It doesn't really add much weight. And it's got the pouches, which are handy. You know what I mean? So I keep that. Water bottle, of course. A knife, usually multiple knives, but at least one. Flashlight. And then, I'm just going to keep it simple. And then some type of like first aid kit. But with that is usually some duct tape and some type of paracord or something along those lines. So it was like the most basic. Obviously, there's typically more stuff, but even just on like shorter hikes, I'll at least have that stuff with me.
Josh, what outdoor brands do you just love right now? What companies, brands, gear that you think are just doing a great job in terms of quality or their branding, their messaging, things they're doing when it comes to conservation, any of those criteria? Who do you just love?
Yeah, really good question. When I think of outdoor gear, I think of some of the brands that I first initially kind of fell in love with. One of them was Mountain Hardwear.
Oh yeah,
I've been a big Mountain Hardwear for years now. I have a jacket that I've had since I don't know 2009 probably.
okay.
2009, 2008, something like that. Or yeah, and still in great shape, and I love it. So I'm a big fan of Mountain Hardwear.
They got bought by Columbia a few years ago, right?
Yeah, I remember hearing that. And I had talked to a couple people about, quality. Is that shifting? Is it changing? And let's see, this guy, I think he worked for. Well, I'm drawing a blank now on the outdoor company he was with, but he was saying that at that level, most of them are pretty comparable, as far as quality and this that. He said that Columbia at the time was doing some had some cool technology that they were using with their jackets with some of the reflective like thermal reflective materials and stuff they were using.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as far as quality, I don't know that I've noticed or seen anything different since, them getting bought out however many years ago that was now. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Mountain Hardwear. If you're, we've talked knives a lot, going that route. There's, Essie that again, we've all, big fans of. Another cool company is Bradford Knives. They've got some cool stuff. And they use CPM 3V, the steel we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So those are a couple that I think do a really good job. And even just the way they connect and reach out, the owners and everything, they do a good job at some of that, which I think says a lot about the company. So those are a couple that really stand out.
Anyone else?
Let's see. I mean, I know we've all been really big into Meat Eater and some of the stuff they do. Just they're a fun brand, right? Like they've got a lot of cool things,
and they really care.
And right. They really,
at least it seems that way.
Yeah, great educational stuff out there, entertaining. I find relatable information, and I think it's cool when you find a company that kind of has that whole thing packaged together, like they do. So it's and conservation wise, they're doing some great stuff. So I'd say those.
Yeah, it's interesting how many smaller brands that they're actually buying right now.
You know what? I've read a little bit on that. It sounds like they're really just growing in general, but also being really strategic about kind of their next steps in their ventures.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. What can we all do to help improve the outdoor experience? What advice would you give for people listening?
Yeah.
What would your recommendation be there?
First and foremost, just get outside. And it can be something as simple as going to a park and walking, right? Because I know that there's some people that spend so much time inside that literally just going to a park is a big step for them. And that's fine, right? Like baby steps, wherever you are.
If you live in New York City, go to Central Park.
Yeah. Absolutely.
However you can.
Yep. Exactly. But even, taking it another step forward, I'd say take a weekend and get a tent, grab some basic gear, and just get outside. Just get outside, go camping, find a spot close by. If you don't want to make the trek, and just get outside. And then on top of that, I would say start making a list of places you want to go and explore, and go do it. Like, yeah, because there's so much. I feel like so many times people get caught up in, oh, I want to go to this country, I want to go here and do that, and that's great. But like, we've got some incredible stuff in our backyards, and I can't tell you how many times I talk to people that have never explored some of the beauty that is 30 minutes away, an hour away, right? And these same people are talking about these overseas adventures and all that, which is fine. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of fun stuff to do overseas, but I would say just get outside and take advantage of what's around you.
Yeah, great advice. What is your personal favorite outdoor activity?
That is really, really hard to answer. So I love hiking, getting outside, but I love camping and I love water. So if I can hike really long, preferably a really strenuous hike, that ends with a campsite. So camping somewhere next to water where you can swim and do whatever else. And then if it's in a place where you can live off the land, icing on the cake. Meaning,
got it,
hunting, catching your own food, that type of thing. Yeah.
So your love for water, I'm actually really surprised that you're not more into fishing.
You know what's funny? I'm laughing because I was telling somebody this story the other day. I think I was like 11, maybe 12. And I don't remember who all was there. Some of the brothers, and we may have had a couple friends anyway, and we were going fishing. So we sat there, we're fishing away. I got so bored. We had a BB gun. I said, I handed the pole to somebody. I went over, grabbed the BB gun, and I would look around for anything moving in the water and just start firing. I'm not a good fisherman for whatever reason. I'm just not good at it. And maybe that means I need to spend more time practicing the art of fishing. Maybe it means I need to be okay with a little bit more of doing nothing. I don't know, but I was thinking of that the other day, and I was like, I really haven't gotten into fishing too much after that.
Gotcha. You haven't really tried fly fishing, have you?
I have not. No, that's true. I have not tried fly fishing. Yeah.
I definitely like that more than just traditional rod and reel.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll have to give that a shot.
Yeah. Josh, what book or books have had the biggest impact on your life?
It's that's such a hard question. There's probably two that come to mind. The first one, Power to the People by Pavel Tsatsouline. He's the guy that brought kettlebells over to the U.S. I think it was in 99, early 2000s. I think it was 99. And his methodology and simplicity, I fell in love with. And the premise of it, in a nutshell, is you don't need a lot of flashy equipment, fancy exercises to be strong and healthy. His focus was more on just strength. It doesn't really matter size, just focus on strength. And so that was the book that really kind of shifted my focus on fitness and some of those things. And then stumbled across kettlebells, in 2005, I think, 2006, something like that. And so yeah, I would say that one definitely. Another one that stands out is A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Great book.
Really good book. Auschwitz survivor, and just his ability to make sense of the chaos and the horrors that he had to endure and experience. Yeah, those two books, I'd say.
Regarding Pavel's book, so one thing
Yeah.
we haven't talked about is your background in fitness and being a personal trainer and kettlebell certified and all that. So you want to talk about that just a little bit?
Sure. So I started working in fitness in 2002. I wasn't certified at the time, just helping friends or what have you. The beauty about fitness is, as long as you know a little bit more than the next guy that you're helping, they think you're an expert.
It's kind of like hunting.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything. You just know a little bit more than the next guy. So I got certified in 2004 through ACE, American Council on Exercise. And then I loved it. So I trained while I was in college, from some of the athletes to the professors, everything, kind of across the board. And then, worked with kettlebells, got to train with some of just incredible trainers that were really a part of that movement in, mid 2000 to 2010, 12, something like that. Anyway, and really loved that. And fitness is great, but there's so much noise. And with social media, it, again, taking, as long as you know a little bit more than the next guy, you're an expert. And it got to the point where I would even have clients say, "Hey, I saw this and this. What do you think?" Like, remember how last week you were complaining about, something was hurting and you weren't sure why? It's because you did what that expert was telling you to do. Like, oh yeah, and I remember. Yeah.
Listen,
Like,
dumbass.
exactly. So it got to a point where it was just there was just so much noise in that space. Now, old habits die hard, right? 5 a.m. up and still doing my workouts. So, that being said, got to a point where I wanted to just shift gears a little bit. And I found some of my writings from college talking about wine. And my first time wine tasting was in 2006 over in a little town called Cortona in Italy. And definitely left an impression. And so moved to the next best thing in my book at the time. It wasn't quite going to pick up and go to Italy, but went to Lodi, which ironically enough, there is a Lodi, Italy. So kind of close. And got involved in wine out there. But the whole fitness passion is still there, and I still work with a couple people. But for the most part, just it should be something you do, not. I'd take it even a step further. It should be who you are. You move every day, eat real food, drink clean water, move your body. Good things tend to happen.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Have you looked into any of the outdoor fitness activities like Train to Hunt and some of the Go Ruck type events and things like that?
A little bit. And the stuff I've looked at is really intriguing, actually. And I think that where the world's at, that there's just going to continue to be more demand for that type of thing. People want to get outside and feel alive again. And a lot of times people don't know what direction to go. How do I get there? And so they're looking for a guide. They need somebody to take them and say, hey, here we go. They're not going to do it for you, but they're going to help guide you.
Everybody needs a coach.
We'll say that again.
Everyone needs a coach.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And so I think some of those programs are really cool. How they're filling that space. And it also looks like it's not, again, I haven't looked at it super extensively, but the bit that I have, it looks like they're legit and not just a bunch of fluff.
Yeah.
Like so many other programs out there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Josh, what's your favorite podcast right now?
I was talking to somebody about that the other day. So I'm really funny with podcast. Like I'll go really intense into one and then just stop it. And like I may not listen to it again for a really long time. Yeah. No real reason behind it. I've just noticed this pattern.
You just get bored with it?
Kind of.
Maybe with the host or like the type of material they're covering?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, okay. Or I may even think, okay, this has been fun. Now let's see what else we can learn. You know what I mean? So just kind of a different approach. So I'll listen to from wine podcast to fitness to outdoor stuff to political stuff just for entertainment purposes to everything in between. So I can't say that I have a favorite podcast. Like I'm trying to think of the last one I listened to.
What are you going to listen to tomorrow? Which one?
Actually, I will be cycling back to Paul Chek tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So kind of the fitness, ancestral health, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Just because it's been a while since I've been there. And so I'll cycle back to that. And that'll probably last for, a few weeks, maybe a month. We'll see. And then go to the next thing.
Super. Josh, this has been fun.
Yeah.
Been a good time.
Absolutely.
Where can people find you online? Other than rewildgear.com.
Right. So aside from Rewild, so for the Kids Love to Swim, the swim program, you can find us kidslovetoswim.com. Mm-hmm. We are also on Instagram, Kids Love to Swim. My personal Instagram account exists, but not active. I do have a Facebook account, but I signed up with Facebook when it was real, meaning for college students, the way it should have stayed.
I agree with that.
And so I used my college email address for that, which I no longer have. And I went to log in, and I don't know what my password is, so I don't know if I'll ever be able to log back in to Facebook.
You may just have to start over and create a new account.
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, the Kids Love to Swim is probably the best bet, and then obviously Josh at Rewild Gear for emails or anything like that.
Sounds good. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks for listening to the Rewild Gear podcast. You can check out the show notes for today's episode at rewildgearpodcast.com. If you're ready to spend more time in the wild, our line of high-quality, minimalistic outdoor gear can help you do just that. Check us out at rewildgear.com.